Alright, so today is Epiphany, and Epiphany is a really cool moment in the liturgical year. It marks the end of the 12 days of Christmas, and also the time when Jesus got those fancy 3 gifts people are always talking about. Also, for all of you individuals who put this goddamn thing up just to take it down the millisecond after Christmas, that tree is supposed to stay up until Epiphany. Traditionally, culturally, that's how long the tree is up for. You put it up, actually in my mom's day, on Christmas Eve, you put up the Christmas tree, and then you don't take it down until today, Epiphany. But in essence, the whole part of the gospel story has many different parts, and in that whole birth of Jesus area, we get the 3 kings, or the 3 Magi, coming to Jesus, following a star to get to him, and then bringing him 3 gifts of frankincense, myrrh, and gold. And what's so interesting about these 3 is that the word Magos in Greek once originally referred to priests from Babylon. And so these 3 kings, or Magi, they actually were very likely to be some kind of Zoroastrian priests or astrologers that were coming through the area that King Herod told to go find Jesus. And for context, the reason Herod was sending these folks over there was not for a good reason. Naturally, the Magi did not know this. They did not know what Herod's intentions were, but Herod wanted these guys to go find out where Jesus was and then report back to Herod so Herod could go and kill Jesus, because there was a prophecy that, some great king of the Jewish people would rise up, and Herod, as the kind of acting ruler of the Jewish part of the Roman Empire, was a little worried about that. And that's also why when the Magi get a dream that says, hey, don't go back to Herod, and they don't, Herod just decides to, don't even risk it. Destroy every child under 2 in Judea. So, the gospel story, the early narrative, is pretty intense. But, going back to Magos. So, Magos became a word eventually referring to magicians. However, in its original context, it does have to do with these kinds of Babylonian and especially Zoroastrian priests. And so, the word Magos took that flavor of, sorcerer and blah blah blah, because obviously the Greeks were kind of tussling with Babylonians at the time and didn't like them, and so that word took on a nasty flavor, because when you say the word, you think also of the enemies you've been battling with, and what better way to disenfranchise them than to make that word just a not good word. But now, something that's really interesting about the kind of liturgical year is that it kind of goes beat by beat through the very seasons of the year. And so, as a lot of y'all know, I did design my very own little, tarot planner that I have been using, a little spiritual planner for my tarot card drawings. But in that, I talk about not only the wheel of the year, right, which is that one that a lot of neo-pagan folks know of, which is right, you got your Imul and your Ostara, and they all kind of, line up with a certain part of the Catholic festival holiday too, right? So, we've got Candlemas, we've got Easter, May Day, what is this one? St. John's Day, Lammas, or the Feast of the Assumption, right? We got all that kind of stuff, and that's great. But there is an actual, just purely Christian calendar, and that is the calendar of the liturgical year, in which case you'll notice that here is Advent, which is right before Christmas. Then you've got Christmas, right? And which is also, just those 12 days. And then from January 6th on, we have our ordinary time. And this is Epiphany, right? This is kind of where we figure out that, yep, Jesus is the Son of God, and that's very cool. And then we get into Lent, then we get into Easter, right? Holy Week and Easter, then Pentecost, and then we're in ordinary time. Ordinary time being pretty much just the rest of the Bible story outside of the story of Jesus. So literally half the year is about the story of Jesus, half the year is about the story about literally everyone else. But for churches that don't have, a lectionary schedule, and who just kind of have the priest, or not priest, but the pastor talking about whatever the hell he wants to talk about, they really miss out on how those readings line up with the seasons. For example, this week, right, with today being Epiphany, we had readings from the book of Jeremiah, the letter from Paul to the Ephesians, and also from, chapter 2 of Matthew. And we also had Psalm 84. So y'all can see these are those readings here. And then, of course, in this book, I also have a space to talk about the symbolism that I'm seeing. In case anyone was wondering who has this, yes, that's what this spot is for, to kind of, How does this make you feel? What does it make you think about? What do you notice about it? And I noticed that in these readings that are coming up in Epiphany, there's a lot of talk about God being the sun and the shield. There's a lot of talk about, like, basically God leading people out of darkness and into something new, right? And so we also have, this concept of being adopted as God's children, making known the mystery of God's will, right? There's a lot of talk about, like, blood and power, which, of course, blood is something that is a purifying force in a lot of religions, including Judaism, during this time, right? So there's a lot of symbolism that suggests that this is a time where the light is finally beginning to grow again, where people are being purified, right? Where people are being reminded of the fact that this is a time of freedom from all these kinds of things, that God himself is breaking shackles and leading people out of the old into the new, even though he's still not going to let them get off light for being shitheads. He's still saying, but it's all right, because we're coming into a new era now, follow me, we're getting out of here, right? He's a jailbreaker. That lines up with where we're coming up to, right? Once we get to, like, February 1st, 2nd, we've got that Imul, or Candlemas, which is all about that kind of purification, throwing off all of the ick of winter and of the past year and moving forward. This entire story of Jesus, really, like, leading up to Easter, is a big festival story about how we are breaking chains, we are breaking old things that are keeping us held down, we are washing ourselves off of all our past mistakes, ick, and everything else, and we're getting going. And the reason I like this more as a Christian is because Imbolc is kind of like a one-day thing, and it's like this ritual cleanse and then you're done, but the whole thing about the Christian timeline is that it really does tell you, like, hey, this is an ongoing process. This is a long time. The whole 40 days of Lent is like 40 Imbolcs, basically. 40 days to purify and hunker down and, break off these old habits. So you get some space to mess up. You get some space to stumble and get back at it, because it's not all expected to happen, like, around this one season. It's all the way leading up to basically spring, when we now come back to life again with Jesus on Easter, that we have this time to kind of gestate, figure out what it is that's going on. But really it starts here with the Feast of the Epiphany, and one thing that's really cool, a little bit of Christian folk magic that people like to do, is the house blessing of the Epiphany. Now typically, right, the way this looks is, with the holy chalk on your door. Usually churches will hand out, like, blessed chalk, and you'll write, like, the year and then CMB, which, depending on who you ask, it might be thought to be the initials of those three magi that visited Jesus, right? So basically this year, to bless your house, you take that special chalk and, say some prayers and however you want to do it, and you would write 20 plus CMB plus 25. So that would be like a house blessing for 2025. As I am Slovenian, though, I actually do have the Hišnjegen up year-round. This got that real old Slovenian, but as you can see, it's got the CMB here for our three kings. Od sveti imena Jezusa, ino sveti treh kralu, means, right, in the name of Holy Jesus and the Holy Three Kings, right? So that just is up all year round, and it's a house blessing. So usually you get these blessed by priests or something, but this inscription, which basically is just invoking the name of Jesus and Mary and the saints and everyone else and the three kings to bless the house, stays up year round. Obviously, whatever you do depends entirely on your cultural background and what you want to do, but this is the time for those house blessings for the new year. And of course, Biba cannot go more than 2 seconds without letting y'all know he's here. Huh, Booba? Yeah, boo!